Have you ever thought about where your produce comes from? Most grocery chains receive produce from various local and national farmers. In fact, there are about 3.4 million farmers in the United States today. But of that staggering number, only 45,000 are Black farmers. At the Better Buggy, we are a proud group of Atlanta-based Black-owned farmers, selling produce locally and nationwide. Our easy-to-navigate online platform makes it easy for you to make a one-time purchase or to simplify your life by subscribing to our weekly produce box. Whichever frequency you choose, you can order with confidence, knowing you'll receive 100% organic farm-fresh produce. If you're looking for a thoughtful gift for a loved one that they'd actually find useful, be sure to pop by our online store where you can snag a gift card your recipient can use to order their own produce and t-shirts. Ready to start supporting local Black-owned farms and making healthier food decisions? Visit thebetterbuggy.com now to start shopping.
We're learning more about the Biden administration's plans for reparations. At the White House press briefing Wednesday, Politico reporter Eugene Daniels asked Press Secretary Jen Psaki about how the president would tackle the issue.
Well, he's supported a study of reparations, which I believe is what's being discussed, and studying the continuing impacts of slavery, which is being discussed in this hearing on H.R. 40, I believe it is. And he continues to demonstrate his commitment to take comprehensive action to address the systemic racism that persists today. Obviously, that is having that study is a part of that.
Maya King reports the president supports the idea behind the bill, and Vice President Kamala Harris endorsed it when she was in the Senate. But as Maya reports, that might not be enough to get a proposal to study reparations for slavery to Biden's desk this Congress. And Maya joins me now from Washington. She's a politics reporter for Politico. Hi there, Maya. Thanks very much for being with us. So can you give us some background, first of all, on the bill known as H.R. 40?
The bill was introduced in 1989 originally, so it's been introduced in every Congress now for more than 3 decades. It establishes a commission to actually study the impact of slavery on African American communities and the role that the United States government played in perpetuating these systems that may have impacted Black communities negatively. Now, the challenge with actually passing it, of course, really lies in a disconnect between what representatives would like to ultimately see this commission achieve. Some are nervous or skeptical of using perhaps taxpayer dollars to fund direct payments to African Americans, while others, especially Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, who has now sponsored the legislation for 3 Congresses, has maintained that this is really just to establish a commission, to begin the process of understanding exactly the harms done as a result of enslavement and several policies, and how Congress can begin to recommend ways to rectify those harms.
And Maya, why has this gained momentum in the past couple of years?
In 2019, actually, was when we really saw the most attention paid to this legislation. As you mentioned, Vice President Kamala Harris actually signed on to the Senate version of this piece of legislation as a co-sponsor. And now it's gained more traction this year, in part because of the role that the Biden administration has played in saying that they support racial equity legislation, and the fact that over the last year, the racial inequities, particularly the impact of the coronavirus, economic downturn, the housing crisis as a result of a lack of funds in communities of color specifically, all of these have really underlined the need for support and the racial inequities that exist that have distinctly and disproportionately impacted Black communities. A number of reparations experts and advocates that I spoke to ahead of yesterday's hearing really emphasized the fact that this hearing is being held for the first time in many years within the first 100 days of a presidential administration. And so they point to that as one positive step, or at least something that they can say represents this issue really being taken seriously, not just by Congress, but by the White House as well.
And you note that it's not clear how committed the White House is to H.R. 40 just yet. But before it can get to Mr. Biden's desk, of course, Congress has to pass it. So what are the specific challenges there?
Well, the biggest challenge to passing this legislation, of course, is making sure that Democrats have the votes. Also, in talking with reparations experts, not just on the advocacy side, but those on the Hill, have pointed out the Democrats' slim majority in Congress is one impediment to passing this legislation, because not only are Republicans vehemently opposed to this bill, moderate Democrats have really been more in favor of more piecemeal approaches to rectifying the issues and racial inequities that we see. Some have supported housing vouchers instead of reparations committee. Some have also proposed universal programs that might not necessarily apply specifically to Black communities, but could disproportionately impact them in a positive way. And I should also note, as my colleague Eugene asked during yesterday's press briefing, President Biden is also in a position to use an executive order actually to establish this commission, which would then give Congress the responsibility of moving or leapfrogging a bit forward to actually begin recommending a reparations program or drafting legislation that would go beyond the scope of a commission to actually starting to understand really what these programs would look like in practice. So there are several steps that have to be taken, obviously, here for this to even make it to the president's desk. But Democrats and advocates, those who are really in favor of passing this bill, say that this year, if not over the next 4 years, is kind of their last shot at really making this a reality.
Now, I want to stop it right there, y'all. Now, it's amazing. They recently, and many of you saw the grant money that they offered to Asians. They got that money for the Asians. Now, how come they didn't do a study? How come they didn't offer them programs or a housing voucher for everything they're going through? How come that wasn't offered to the Asians? How come there was no hearings in Washington, D.C. over the grant money that was offered recently to the Asians? How come they're not doing all that stuff with them? Do you see the double standards that are going on here? So as long as you are light and bright, then you don't have to jump hurdles or go through the red tape for reparations. You just get it. But if you are of a descendant of slaves, oh, then we need commissions, we need studies, and we need to look at alternative ways to make sure you get reparations, maybe a housing voucher or some program that is not controlled by you, but by everyone else. Yeah, we need to study this. It's complex and yada, yada, yada. But it doesn't seem to be complex when it's any other group going through something, then the money just makes it right to their hands. Do you see the hypocrisy in this? What was it, a $50 million grant for Asians? They just gave it to them. But for us, we need committees and subcommittees, and we need to, bring people into Washington and have these hearings, and we need to kick dust and throw rocks and everything and just waste a lot of time just before we get to the money. Well, if that's the case, why don't you offer the same thing you want to offer Black people? Yeah, why don't you give them vouchers for education for being beat up out in the streets? Black people been beat up out in the streets for 500 years. Why didn't you offer the Asians a voucher for housing for getting beat up and harassed out in the streets? Yeah, it's just awfully funny what you want to offer us. You don't want to offer anybody else that's going through trouble. Y'all full of shit. And this is why America is doomed. And it's going down because of the way you are doing just daily practices on us opposed to everyone else. You deserve the downfall that you're getting. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.